Hi again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of 7 Days to Sunday, presented by FanDuel. Niagara Falls' own Zig Fracassi, of course, with SiriusXM NFL Radio, SiriusXM Sports, and pleased to be joined, as I normally am, by Tulsa Football Hall of Famer, former Bills standout offensive lineman, and a guy in spirit moving Josh Allen like Osiris Torrance did on Sunday. My guy, Mr. Jerry Ostroski. How are you, my brother?
I'm doing well, Zig. Doing really good. I'm just excited. Obviously, big weekend for the Bills. They win this game in Jacksonville, which we knew was going to be a tough game. They're able to get it done. And you know what? When you're road dogs and you're a wild card team, you're on the road again. And they didn't do us any favors like San Francisco. The NFL gives us a short week as we travel, most of the way across the country to go to Denver. And hey, injuries galore. Same situation is every week that we talk about. But we're going to go to Denver and give them hell and give them the best game we can, and excited about that one as well.
Yeah, and it's, of course, going to be the first time ever that they've played out at the old Mile High, if you want to call it that, in terms of the Bills and Broncos in playoff history. Of course, they met a couple of times. In fact, just this past season, and the Bills took care of the Broncos and the rookie Bo Nix at the Highmark Stadium. But to this game with Jacksonville, and it just seemed as though it was kind of, you always use the boxing term like a rope and dope, and that just seemed like what it was like for the first three quarters or so. But then all of a sudden, the fourth quarter looked like Ali Frazier, for goodness sakes. They hit a knockout punch. Bills counter with a knockout. Of course, Jacksonville came back. I thought Trevor Lawrence played pretty well until that final interception. But then, of course, what I was referencing here with the literal Buffalo. And that's what I thought Josh Allen was. You talk about a guy, Jerry, who took the team on his shoulders. That tush push there on third down, obviously, with Osiris Torrance basically being his caddy and cart for the 10 yards. Josh, I think, literally morphed into a Buffalo, how he wanted to get those yards to help his team win. And sure enough, that was another drive that I think none of us actually would have seen, correct?
Exactly. I mean, you got two teams that scored 28 points combined in the fourth quarter, and it was like you said, Zig, it was a definite old school championship boxing match. Both champions, both strong fighters, drug it to the deep end, drug it to the big rounds, the late rounds, and saw who was going to break. Haymakers were exchanged, and obviously Josh Allen throws the last one, and Trevor Lawrence misses. But the thing about this game, and you talk about that tush-push play, I think that play in general, and I think we're all sitting there understanding that aspect of the tush-push will probably be outlawed this year in the summer owner meetings. I would imagine that's going to go away. But until they do, continue to do it. But I think that epitomizes this Bills football team.
Yes.
And, you hear Josh talk about it all the time, that you got me, I got you mentality that this Buffalo Bills team has. And that play in general, I think, sums up the Buffalo Bills in the 2025 season. Whatever you have to do to get the quarterback across the line, the goal line, the running back, whoever it may be, whatever you have to do to win, this Bills team is willing to do it. Then we hear the story again today. Obviously, Terrell Shaver is going to go down in folklore, Bills folklore, playing most of the game after partway through the second quarter with no ACL, with a torn ACL. He finishes the game and plays like another 30-some plays on it and is an effective player. I mean, that's what this Bills team's about, and this is what it's so interesting to me. And I'm not an apologist, but I'm definitely a fan of Sean McDermott. And that's what you get with him as your head coach.
That's right.
He believes in these guys. He loves these guys, the way he treats them. Like I said before, many, many times, Zig, Sean has his unnegotiables, things that he demands, and you're going to do them or not be around. But he also allows these guys to be individuals within that team aspect, and it's just showing. I mean, this is a football team that loves one another. They find ways to get things done in adversity, And I'm excited about this week because it's another similar situation against a very good football team, and I expect the Bills to play at a high level like they always do.
Well, and let's also not forget here from the proverbial how do we get to this point. Let's not forget earlier in the game, Josh was evaluated for a concussion. Then a little bit later, Jerry bangs his hand on someone's helmet so you can clearly see the guy's in pain. And then on that scramble, looked as though he may have twisted the leg awkwardly. So here's a guy going through all that, willing his team to win, yet having those 3 pretty significant health issues. I'm sure, he's probably resting as we speak here because, quite frankly, it's a shorter week going into that altitude. He's going to need all the rest and the massage and everything that it's going to take for him to perform against a very, very good Broncos defense.
I mean, obviously, just a tremendous performance by him. And like you said, Zig, playing through all these issues he has. And let's not forget about the foot.
That's right.
The foot is a major part of this as well. And, I think a lot of us are sitting around waiting for the end of the season. Hopefully that's 3 games from now.
Yes.
Until we get the truth and the full injury report of what he's been dealing with all season. But I've never seen anything like it as far as quarterbacks go. Now, I played with Jim Kelly, and Jim, like I said, I've never played with Josh Allen as far as, on the field, all that stuff. We've never been teammates. But as far as the toughest guys I've ever played with, I always felt Jim Kelly was that guy. I don't know if Josh Allen's not creeping in to take that crown. I mean, they're very similar in that aspect. Yeah. They don't complain. They show up. They work, and their availability is unworldly. And the fact that this guy, and then that first hit that he took, that he got evaluated, that was a cheap shot by Hines Allen, who kind of all of a sudden like, oh, I'm stumbling, and then lands full body weight on Josh's chest and head. But that's besides the point. I mean, what he's doing out there and the game that he had was just phenomenal. Just shows the type of mental toughness he has. I remember Brett Favre one time in an interview, Zig, and I'll never forget this. He said, before you can have physical toughness, you got to have mental toughness. Absolutely. If you're not mentally tough, there's no way you can be physically tough. And obviously Josh Allen is his mental toughness is off the charts.
And what was even more remarkable about this game, Jerry, and Jacksonville did a really good job essentially taking James Cook out of this game. The NFL's leading rusher averaged barely 3 yards a carry on 15 attempts. So for what they were able to do, but they hit some pass plays. I thought Shakir was all over the place the other day in a good sense, obviously utilizing the tight ends. Of course, the big pass play to Brandon Cooks to set up Josh's dramatics. I thought that was good. And then on the other side, Trey White looked like he dialed up some old man River because he was instrumental on that tip ball that Bishop picks off to clinch the game.
Yeah, this is a Jacksonville defense that was as advertised. And, sometimes you get these defenses that are talked about in a certain way. This group here was phenomenal. I mean, you looked at Hines Allen and you had Trayvon Walker, and then you had Hampton. Yeah, you got a Lewican who just gets guys on the ground. That was the one thing about this game. If you look at the statistics, and if I can find it, I will pull it up. But you look at statistics, and I think the yards after catch numbers were minimal.
Right.
They were very minimal. The Bills made a play, you were on the ground. There wasn't a whole bunch of yards after catch. Now, obviously, Khalil Shakir had the most success with that. But if you look at the yards after catch percentage, it was only 37% of Josh's total passing yards were after the catch. So Jacksonville gets you on the ground. They defend well. They do some things. I thought the Bills did some stuff to get after him in the passing game, which was good. Obviously, the return of Dalton Kincaid was big time good for the Bills. But, yeah, I mean, it's the first time, Zig, and you talked about it right off the jump. We haven't seen this Bills offense be able to be successful without running the football with James Cook. But they found a way in the biggest moment.
That's right.
And it kind of gives you hope for the rest of this thing because, again, this week, a Broncos defense, it's good. Are they the Jaguars? I don't think so. Are they Houston? I don't think so. But they're still a really good unit. But the Bills will, they'll get after it, find a way to be successful and score points.
7 days to Sunday, of course, continues, presented by FanDuel. All this talk here, Jerry, I'm starting to work up an appetite here. I don't know what's hot out in Denver, but I know Anchor Bar's pretty damn good, right?
Yeah, the Anchor Bar is very good, and the Anchor Bar is a proud sponsor of the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network, and we're blessed to have them with us here on the Overreaction Network. And if you're in Buffalo, you want to go to the original place that invented the original chicken wing in 1964, you can still go to that place in Buffalo. It's the Anchor Bar. Frank and Teresa Bellissimo opened the place up, invented the buffalo wing, jumbo wings, fresh, never frozen, multiple sauces and dry rubs you can get. If you want to try some other buffalo specialties, get that beef on weck, that pepperoni pizza that they make. It's so good. And then, of course, as always, you got some people, it's been the new year. They're, trying to watch their weight, trying to get a little healthier. They've got wraps and salads and stuff as well. So they've got options for everybody at the Anchor Bar. And the other thing that they have options with, Zig, if you're not in Buffalo and you're in one of 17 cities that has an Anchor Bar franchise, you can get the wings there as well. So
nice.
Some of the newer cities that have an Anchor Bar franchise, Raleigh, North Carolina, Frisco, Texas, Tucson, Arizona, the home of our own John Fina here on the Overreaction Network. So if you're in one of those 17 cities or you're in Buffalo and you want to go to the original, check out the Anchor Bar, proud sponsor of the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network, and we thank them for it.
Absolutely. Some great stuff indeed. Legendary product in Western New York. Should make people aware that on Tuesday, Jerry, a host of roster moves made by the Bills. Gabe Davis, unfortunately, injured himself, and he's on IR now. Christian Wilkerson signed to the practice squad. He's a wide receiver. Nick Broker, offensive lineman, a reserve future contract. But this one here is kind of interesting. Defensive tackle Ed Oliver, wide receiver Curtis Samuel, designated to return to practice.
Yes.
Wouldn't it be good to have those two back?
Well, we don't. I'm kind of hard for me to remember what Curtis Samuel looks like. We don't see him very often.
True.
He's kind of like, he's kind of like Haley's Comet or Northern Lights. You only see him every so often. But if there was a time for Curtis Samuel to come back, now is the time with two receivers that are going to be on the IR and Shavers. And you've already said his name. Who's our other receiver that's got the ACL injury?
Oh, Davis.
Gabe Davis. You'll have to excuse me. It's been a long time. So with those guys out for the year, it's good to have him come back. And then, of course, they got some other options to help with depth. Of course, to me, the biggest thing that I worry about is Shavers and his special teams play. Heck, if he'd have listened to Marv Levy and took the ball off the foot instead of trying to hit it out of the air, he would have had that block punt right off the bat. But no, he's been a tremendous teams player as well, attitude player, really good blocker in the run game. So it'll be interesting to see how they fill those shoes. But no, Ed Oliver showing up's a big deal. Most people know in my former life, I used to be a medical sales rep, and some of the products we sold were used.
I knew that.
Yeah, some of the products we sold were used to repair bicep tendon tears.
Okay.
And being in probably, 500 bicep tendon surgeries throughout my career as a medical rep, this is kind of pushing the envelope a little bit, so to speak.
Okay.
Now, here's the thing, and the orthopedic doctors will tell you this all the time. The rehab and healing rate of an athlete is a little different than, me and you, Zig. We're just average Joes, right? The pro athlete or the college athlete, the younger guy doing whatever, and then all the modalities and stuff they have to go with it to help with healing, they can heal at a quicker rate. So we'll see how it goes. Obviously, Ed also had the meniscus tear. Those are like, that's like going to the dentist and getting your teeth cleaned anymore. They just do it real quick and you heal up. So wouldn't it be something if we roll into Denver and Ed Oliver gets some reps this weekend? It'd be something else.
Absolutely. Well, of course, the venue is the old Mile High area with the Denver Broncos. And before we break them down, of course, what's going to get a little bit of attention this week, too. I don't know if you ever saw the video clip on this, Jerry, was I guess it was recently. Shannon Sharp, of course, the Pro Football Hall of Fame tight end and Denver Broncos standout, had his former quarterback, John Elway, on. And I
hadn't seen that.
Yeah, okay, and I'll paraphrase here. Shannon had asked John when he was the basically the GM of the team, what was his biggest regret? And it's like, I couldn't sell our guys on Josh Allen. I'm like, this is kind of interesting considering John Elway, the greatest quarterback in Broncos history, can argue easily top 15, maybe even 10 quarterbacks in the NFL in all time, 2 Super Bowl championships. Ernie Accorsi once said he was the best prospect he had ever seen. So a lot going on there. But his approach was, John's was, he wanted to have everybody buy in on him, Jerry. The GM, obviously the player personnel people, your scouting staff, whatever the case may be. And even though John could probably judge a quarterback better than all of them and probably knew how good Josh was going to be at one point, the fact of the matter was they just couldn't get, an accord, an agreement on him. So hence, the great Elway evaluated him, and it didn't turn out that way, which turned out to be in Buffalo's favor.
I think the hardest thing with Josh Allen is a lot of these scouts, a lot of these personnel guys, they all kind of do the same thing, Zig. They're very big on comps.
Yes.
I'm not huge on comps, but a lot of these guys are big on comps because when they're in that room like a year or two later, and, this guy that they picked at a certain spot, say he's not doing well.
Right.
And ownership calls him to the table, or whoever calls him to the table, the general manager, whatever, they've got that in their back pocket. Right. Like we said, when we evaluate him, he comped as John Elway, or he comped as Joe Montana. Josh Allen has no comps.
Mm-mm.
I don't know if there's any player that's played in the league that comps to Josh Allen. I just don't.
I can't think of one.
No, he's played. Pat Jones, who I do the radio show with here in Tulsa, he made a comment. He said he's a bigger, tougher, or bigger, stronger Joe Montana. I said, okay. I said, I'll take that. I said, that's close. I said, that's probably the closest you can come. But he's peerless, and I think that's the hardest thing sometimes with these guys in these draft rooms, when you can't comp them, and then you're trying to convince the general manager or the owner that this is who we need to take, and they can't visually see it because most of those guys don't understand Paul the way some of these other dudes do. It's hard for them to see it. They can't envision it, and they won't make a move on it.
Well, then there's also the thing too. He's not a Bama guy. He's not from Michigan. He's not, a power 4 school. Yeah. He's Wyoming, and his footwork and his mechanics are all over the place. Why bother?
You're right. You're 100%
Then they said
correct.
that about some guy named Mahomes too. I guess he turned out okay.
Yeah, Pat was fine. I mean, I think the one thing that they don't ever, I guess they do. I know Parcells was big on the things he would always ask. Parcells was a guy that when you brought a player to him and you're like, we need to draft him. He's this. He does this in the 40. He does this for 225. He can jump here. The first thing Bill would go, okay, yeah, I know I know about that. Mm-hmm. Tell me about the things I can't see. Tell me about the things I can't see, the intangibles. What are his leadership skills? What is his intelligence level? What does he do in his off time? Is he working on his trade, or is he out running the town? Like all those types of things. And that's the one thing about Josh Allen that's obvious now, and I think it should have been obvious then. The things you can't see with him are nuts. I mean, I got asked to give a quote about that tush push play this weekend. Do you know who Mark Lombardi is?
I've heard the name.
Yeah, he does a Substack deal. He does stuff for Philadelphia, Fox and Philly.
Right. Yes.
Very well tuned in. He lives in the Philadelphia area. He sent me a text message, and he asked me about, he gave me a question. The question was, is this the first time? Josh has always had to play hero ball, and now you look at the defense and what they're doing and everything. Is this the first time that the team now is carrying Josh as opposed to Josh carrying the team, kind of using that play as a symbolic, the team picking him up and carrying him? And I'm like, I don't agree with that. I mean, I don't agree that wins and losses are quarterback stats. I don't. I mean, this is still the greatest team sport ever, and you win as a team, you lose as a team. Now, if you just happen to have a guy like Josh Allen that plays well, whatever. It's still a team. It's still a team deal. But I did say this, and it's like I said earlier. That plays the one thing about Josh Allen is he's an apex competitor, yes. But he's almost he's also an apex teammate, and sometimes almost to a fault, to where if he just had a little bit more of that holding guys accountable or getting after them, but he's getting better at it. But it's just that group, they just love one another, man. It's amazing what McDermott's built, and yeah, I mean, I think those things go along the lines with what Josh, learned growing up. The family situation, being farmers, whatever, his struggle. I know that my struggle made me appreciate it so much more when I finally made it.
That's right.
And you never disrespect the game. You just know that you've been blessed, and you've been given an opportunity, and you do with it what you will. But I've never heard that story about Elway wanting to draft him, but it totally makes sense.
7 days to Sunday continues, presented by FanDuel. Jerry Ostroski, Zig Fracassi. I know you're quite familiar being there in the Tulsa area with Nick Benito.
Oh, yeah.
The outstanding linebacker with the Broncos, 14 sacks. Cooper, a sack machine at 8. John Franklin Myers, a guy I've gotten to know through the years. Former Jets standout defensive end. He's got 7. They led the league this past year in sacks. They get after it, and then that last line of defense, especially anchored by arguably the best corner in the game, and Surtain. This is going to be, pardon the pun, Jerry, a mile-high order for the Bills in Denver on Saturday.
It is. I mean, this is a very talented group, and if you'd have told me Nick Benito would turn into the pro that he's turned into, I would be shocked. Benito was a good player at OU. I never had him pegged as leading the league or close to the league leading sacks. He's an undersized guy, wins with a lot of speed, a lot of bend, and those types of things. One thing about both of our tackles, they do have quite a bit of bend to them and stuff. They can match that if they need to, and they're going to have to, obviously. But I don't get the sense, and I know this is a very good pass rush group, but they are a bit undersized across the front, and I don't get that same feeling I had with Houston or Jacksonville. I guess they maybe rush the passer-wise, probably like Jacksonville, but the fact that they're a little bit more undersized, where Jacksonville gave us so many fits, we couldn't move anybody.
Mm-mm.
We weren't able to get any sort of verticality, not even horizontal movement. You can't horizontally move big, heavy dudes because they don't want to go horizontal anyway. They'll just sit there. But we couldn't get any vertical movement. There's a lot of lockout up front. Our inside guys got handled pretty good. When we did have success running the ball, we got outside. But I don't feel that way about this Denver group. I think we can move them and get some stuff going in the running game, which, again, is what we're going to have to do. And, obviously they found a way to be successful last week against the Jags and against their zone defense and everything else. But I expect us to run the ball much better this week, and I think that'll let us continue to set up our play action passing and stuff like that, because that's one thing we've done well. We did tweak our protections. We did bring some extra guys in, some tight ends. There was one point in time where we had a back and a tight end in the backfield. We've chipped and stuff. So we did pay attention, and we weren't hard-headed as far as we gave the O-line some help in those blitz looks. But I think we'll be able to handle a lot of that stuff with this Denver team, doing the same stuff we did last week, and then, of course, run the football and then go from there.
Yeah, offensively, Bo Nix, there have been games this year. By the way, even though they've got the gaudy record 14-3, half of their wins, Jerry, they scored 20 or fewer points. So,
right.
So they were not at times an offensive juggernaut, except, gosh, that fourth quarter against Philadelphia, and then that equally topping fourth quarter against the Giants. If you remember, I think they had like 100 points in the
right.
fourth in that particular game. Nix is almost like your ho-hum quarterback through 3 quarters. Then he turns into John Elway in the fourth quarter.
Right.
It's really astounding. So I think that's where, if you got to watch, because that altitude, fatigue could set in. And if you leave that door open just a crack, Jerry, we've seen what Denver can do. So that's where the Bills, that's where their physical and mental conditioning, I think, is going to take place if this game's even reasonably close into the fourth quarter.
The one thing that It's funny, and it's not often that you play these back-to-back teams and you feel kind of the same way, but I do. You know, I thought going into this game last week that we would have an advantage with our secondary in the way we play coverage.
Okay.
The way we're able to rotate coverages, make them look one thing, rotate out of them, play the same coverages, but different guys are playing the different spots and just creating a ton of confusion. McDermott's a master of disguise in the back half of the defense. And I thought eventually, and I kind of called, I said, I thought Lawrence was going to turn the ball over. And he did.
And he did.
He got confused and threw it right to people. I see that same thing this week with Bo Nix. I don't think Bo Nix has arrived by any means. Okay, I think he's a good quarterback. I think he moves around. He does a good job with his feet, things like that. But I think the Bills will be able to confuse him in coverages. And, if they're able to do that, or they're able to get some turnovers, and then, of course, that front seven is going to have to control some things. They don't run. I don't think that the Broncos aren't great at running the football. I think they're sufficient. But I kind of look at this whole thing defensively a lot like I did last week. I think it could fall into the same aspect of can we get Nix turned over because he's having difficulties handling that defensive coverage looks that are all over the place.
7 days to Sunday continues, presented by FanDuel, Jerry Ostroski, Zig Fracassi. So, keys. I know you normally have a few here. So, what are your top elements here for a Bills victory over the top seed Broncos?
Well, first and foremost, it's Prater, and Prater should get a lot of love from last week. I don't know what do you know what the FanDuel spread is, Zig? We're 1 point favorites from FanDuel? I think
last I checked, it was
1 point favorite FanDuel. So, I Prater, coming back from the injury, making the kicks he needed to make. It wasn't like they were super easy kicks.
No, that
needs to continue. In the playoffs, I thought that was one major mistake that Liam Cohen made last week by going for it on fourth down. We got Trevor Lawrence on the ground. They reversed the first down, and we got the ball back, and we got out of a turnover situation with no points allowed. When points are there in the postseason, you got to take them, and I think Prater will continue to be a big part of this thing. Second thing, obviously, we got to run the football this week. Now, granted, we can win without it. We showed that this past week. But, man, it sure does make things a lot easier when James Cook's ripping off runs. And I hope – and I said this in the postgame show, and I still do believe this. I think that some things might have changed a little bit on play calling when Ty Johnson wasn't available.
Yes.
I think you saw James Cook get 15 carries. There wasn't a lot of that slippery James Cook stuff where he was glancing off of tackles and going down. He was getting squared up.
Right.
And knowing he's not super big, I don't know how much the Bills really wanted to maybe put him in harm's way. They wanted to run just enough to be able to be effective in play action and then, go from there. So I'd like to see James Cook. Hopefully Ty Johnson's back, and we got both of them. When both of them are involved, that's a big deal, especially in third down with Ty Johnson. And then, my third key to this game is I'm not saying you got to hold them to 50 yards, but you've got to do a better job in the run defense. And guys like Joey Bosa, who did a good job rushing the passer, I don't know if you listened to Bobby Babich, he called him out. He said, you got to be better than this. That's why we brought you in. You can't play that way.
Yep.
You're not that guy, and don't do it again. So Bosa and the likes, they're going to have to figure out a way to slow that running game down and not let them get those big, 10, 12, 15-yard chunks. It's just hard to manage. We find a way to do it, but it just can't be – it's not sustainable over time. So that's a big part of it. And then the other thing will be obviously that Bills offensive line and their pass protection schemes. Are they able to continue to mix it up? Do they bring tight ends? Like I think it was the third play of the game, Zig. We stopped them. They punted it to the 6-yard line. And we get the ball, and third down on that drive, Josh saw something. He brought Dawson Knox from the end back into the backfield. Yes. And he had the back and Dawson Knox pick up both those guys, and we got a first down. We're able to get that poor field position flipped and get it out to the 50 before we punted it. So we are willing to do that. It's obvious. And between that and then also the way we can pick up every gap or have a guy in every gap, the way we run play action, will allow us to pick up those sim pressures and stuff. So other key is, with this type of pass rush team, you got to continue to mix up your protections, continue to be sharp. And the other thing I did not see this week, and I thought it was interesting, as far as protections go, David Edwards has been very vocal and pointing and doing all this stuff. I don't think there was as much of that this past week. Josh was much more in control of where the protections were going and what was going on. And so hopefully we continue to see a lot of that too, because if they're all on the same page, it's much better than, you got a center talking, a left guard talking, Josh trying to figure it out, limit the communication chain. There's one guy that calls it. And I thought that Josh was the one that was mostly in charge of all that this weekend, which was a good deal.
1.5 is the Bills' point spread. They are favored at FanDuel Sportsbook. Total is 46.5. So the winner of that would play the winner of the Houston-New England game. Kind of a grinded out affair Sunday night for the Patriots. They did beat the Chargers. Cost Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator, his gig. Meanwhile, Houston went into Pittsburgh on Monday night, Jerry, and that defense was just all over Aaron Rodgers. If Stroud played half a decent game, they should have won by 35 at least. As it was, Houston got a late defensive touchdown, would cruise that way, and then we found out on Tuesday, after 19 years, Mike Tomlin is out as head coach of the Steelers, although it could be interesting to see what ultimately happens with him.
The Tomlin situation is interesting, and I think a big part of that, Zig, is I think, what I talked about off the air. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Mike Tomlin as a head coach and what he's done.
Sure.
But maybe a couple years too late.
Oh, at least.
And then we talked about this on another show today. I thought was an interesting concept that, if you look at that Pittsburgh team, Mike did not have much success. He had some, but not a ton of success developing the younger player.
Correct.
And, there's receivers that were issues, and George Pickens, and then they were gone, and this guy receiver, he was gone. And then you watch who they're bringing in. They get Pickens. Pickens doesn't pan out. They end up with Bryce Young and Mason Rudolph for a bit. Then they bring in old man Rodgers this year. I think there was a bit of a disconnect between Tomlin and the newer age of player, as opposed to the older age of player. I don't think Mike was willing to budge.
They aren't all Cam Hayward or T.J. Watt,
Right, and which is why you look at their roster and they're so old.
Right,
because they're gonna bring those older guys in that he feels can handle that. And it's the same thing.
Became mercenaries after a while.
Right, and it's the same thing with the coaching staff. There's not a ton of young, up and coming, just go out and Mike's coaching tree is not really vast.
I was going to say, is there one, right?
Right. I mean, the one time you remember the power struggle with Bruce Arians. Bruce Arians gets fired. Roethlisberger has a fit. So, it's funny that how all these things come back together. And he goes to William and Mary, and his good friend and teammate is Sean McDermott.
Yes.
And if you watch Sean McDermott when he first got that job in Buffalo, and he learned under Jim Johnson at Philadelphia, yes. He was a hardcore guy with an edge. Went to Carolina as the D coordinator, came up there, tried to do some of the same things, but I think he learned real quick, Zig, I'm going to have to change, or I'm not going to be around much longer.
That's right.
I'm going to have to figure out how to communicate with these kids, and I'm going to have to figure out how to build relationships. And Sean has done it. And done it in aces. We talk about it all the time, allowing my players to have individuality within a team concept. And then you look at Tomlin, and I don't believe Tomlin has. And I think it's a big deal. So I'll be honest with you. I mean, I know that he resigned, so that means that the Steelers hold his rights. And if he was to go to another team like Sean Payton, they would have to work out a trade.
Right.
I don't know if we'll see him coach again.
Wow.
I really don't.
Okay.
I don't.
At least this year, maybe.
I don't think he'll coach this year. When he gets a taste of that TV money,
and
he understands how easy it is, and understands what's going on, I'm not sure we'll see Mike Tomlin again. I really don't. And to be honest with you, Zig, with other candidates and stuff, if Mike's not willing to change on some of these things, is he really the best option?
Yep. Well, for a franchise that has had 3 head coaches in 56 years.
Zig, I'm 55 years old. I've only known 3 of them.
That's right.
And I love football at a young age. I'm not saying I was watching football, and knowing players at 2 or 3, but by the time I was old enough to be a fan of teams and all that and follow football, I only remember 3.
Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, Mike Tomlin.
And this is what was funny today. We were trying to predict what will the Steelers do.
Yeah.
Who will the Steelers' next head coach be? And we in this panel we have, it's a bunch of former players, guys like Mark Collins, Bradford Banta, Jess Ganina, Lincoln Kennedy. There's all these guys we've all played, right?
Sure.
And they asked
players too.
They were asking, what do you think? They asked Brad. They said, well, what do you think that Pittsburgh will do? And he goes, what has Pittsburgh always done? They don't care about anybody else. They don't care what anybody thinks. There's a certain style of guy that they like.
Yep. He
goes, what did Tomlin do to deserve the Pittsburgh job when he got it? Right? Like, how did he swoon the Rooneys? And the prediction is, and I thought it was dead on, Brad thinks the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers will be Brian Flores.
Wow. And he was there a couple years ago. Let's not forget.
Right. He was there a couple years ago. So yeah, there's a lot. That's what he thinks.
Now,
I think it's
an intriguing one, but Jerry, you've also got before we move on here.
Rooneys don't care. I know you're getting ready to say about the suit against
the lawsuit.
NFL.
Yes. Okay.
Rooneys don't care.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think the Rooneys give a flip.
Okay.
And I think the Rooneys have enough respect in that league.
Okay.
They're going to do what they do. So yeah, unless it's just something that, I'm sure Roger.
Marcus Freeman's name's starting to circulate, the Notre Dame coach, but
I don't know if Marcus would. I don't know. Maybe he would for Pittsburgh. I know he didn't want to. For the word is he could have wrote a check to go to New York, and he didn't.
Exactly.
The thing about Freeman is, and obviously, if he did go to Pittsburgh, he'd have more time with his kids. He's got a lot of kids, and they're wrestling and playing sports and stuff. But no, I don't know. I thought that Brian Flores call by Brad was interesting, and like he said, say anything you want. The Rooneys don't care.
Although. Wouldn't this be the drama of all dramas if Harbaugh and Tomlin traded gigs?
Yeah.
It's possible. Highly unlikely.
Very highly unlikely. I don't see Tomlin going to Baltimore. How's my man pronounce his last name? Biscotti? Is it like
Biscotti.
this? Biscotti?
Yeah.
I don't know. He's
although he had a flip about that today. He was asked about it. He's like, holy crap. Yeah.
Wow. I have to wonder about him sometimes, but no, that would be interesting. That would be very interesting.
There we go. We wind down here 7 days to Sunday, presented by FanDuel. So we're going to be talking about the Bills either in Houston or New England the following Sunday, or what?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not super sure. I mean, I think that this New England Houston game could be ugly, ugly, like nasty 9-6 type stuff. I do like New England's chances with the same thing with the Bills and Bo Nix. I think it was I can't remember who it was. They said the Chargers had no idea what they were running coverage wise. They were all confused. I mean, so I can see some of that with Stroud.
Yep.
And then of course, younger team, whatever, I can see that Houston defense getting after New England. Obviously, New England's got a good defense of their own, but it's nothing like what Houston has. I think it's going to have to take – this is where the training wheels come off, man.
Yeah, I agree.
Everybody, there's a lot of people who want to call Drake May the MVP and everything else. He's the new boss of the AFC East, all this stuff. Here's your opportunity, Big Cat.
Yeah.
This is the real. This isn't the Jets twice a year. It's not the Dolphins twice a year. This isn't some of the teams you played and the schedule you played. This is the real. And I think this is going to be a big, big game for Drake May if that New England team wants to win.
Will the Bills be the opponent of either?
I believe so.
Okay.
I think the only thing that I worry about, Zig, the only thing I worry about is the health, the overall health of the team.
Altitude's not a factor?
They've done studies that if the Bills wanted to handle the altitude the way that studies now say they should fly out first thing in the morning and not go to Denver until the day of the game. So if you fly in,
Really?
play,
Wow.
fly out. So a lot of college teams nowadays
Wow.
will not go to altitude games until the morning of the game. Because studies are showing the less time you spend there, the less time your body has a chance to go, hey, I'm a mile high. So you come in, you play, you get out. Other than that, the best way to do it is show up a week early and slowly acclimate yourself. But no, I think they'll be fine. Okay. I just worry about the overall health of this football team and playing an extra day earlier. That's my biggest thing. But I like the Bills to win this game. I like the Bills. I like the Bills to win it probably like 24 or 24, 21 or 27-24, somewhere there. Another tight game like Jacksonville. As long as Josh does the things that he did last week, and I think that some of the stuff he did was, I think he was number one out of all the quarterbacks in the wild card round as far as yards over expected, throws, yardage over expected. He got the ball out quickly. He made a lot of check downs. He was smart with it. Maybe Zig, the whole self-scouting thing that they talked about the week before really helped him out. But he was very efficient. And, it sucks that every time Josh Allen wins a game now, Zig, the first thing that everybody says that has no clue, that doesn't watch the game, goes, oh, Josh Allen, hero ball, put the Bills on his back again. Nobody else did anything but Josh.
Right, yeah.
If you watch that game, other than a couple of plays, which it should be, right, a couple of plays, because that's what you want. You want play in structure until you need to be that guy, which is what it was this weekend. There was no hero ball in this aspect. This guy just played really, really well, and the team responded around him. And hopefully, get another one of those performances this weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Looking forward to the rest of the lineup, of course, here on the Overreaction Buffalo Network. John Fina. Looking forward to Mafia Bets, Anthony with the walkthrough, and then, of course, you guys breaking it down, Joe and John and yourself. After the game on Sunday. I'm there in spirit, although I'm preparing for my Sirius XM NFL radio post-game show after I'm with you guys there. So
awesome.
It's going to be fun, my friend. And until next time, take care, right?
Yep, much love. Go Bills.
Go Bills. Peace out.
I'm still the same.